Okay. I'm not going to worry about logging in, but basically, what happens is you get set up for your pre-licensing, all right? And once you get set up for your pre-licensing, you log in, right? So the login is whoever sets up your pre-licensing, basically. Okay. From there, you'll have a bunch of different sections, and at the end of each section, you have a practice test. You have to get at least a 70% on the practice test, but you can take them as many times as you want. Okay. So this is what I did. So each section has about, I'll probably say maybe 20 to 30 slides. Okay. I'm gonna, for the millennials out there, this is what I did, and then my mom's gonna talk to you about how she did it, which is a little less techy. What I did was, as I'm going through each section, what I did was I highlighted. So each slide, I highlighted the slide. Okay, each one of them, every single one of them, highlighted the slide. I copied it, and then I opened a Word document and I pasted each section all in a Word document. By the time I was done, it was like 130 pages of like content. Okay. Then when I get to the practice test, what I did is, as I'm going through the practice test, I look at the key words in the question, or I look at the answers, and what I do is I highlight that keyword or that answer, and then I go to the Word document. I hit Control F, which means Control Find in the Word document, and I paste the key term into the Control F, the Control Find, and I find out where in that 130 pages is where that particular question is in the slide. All right. From there, then I can then I read a little bit and I say, okay, this is the right answer based on the content that I copied and pasted. All right. So that's how I did the practice test. I didn't watch any of the videos. So they have videos where you can like watch and they like explain stuff. I didn't do any of that. I didn't really read through each slide. All I did was click through the slides. Didn't read them. Just click through, click, click, click. As I'm clicking through, I highlight all the content. I hit Control. I hit Control C, which is copy, or just copy. Then I paste it into the Word document. Then as I'm doing the practice test, I look for the key term in the practice test or in the question or the answer. And then I go back to the Word document, hit Control F again, and then I find that key term, and then I read from there. So that's pretty much how I studied for my test. All right. Then what I did, I took all the practice test questions and answers, and I did another Word document. I highlighted it all, copied it, pasted it into a Word document, a separate Word document, and all the questions and answers. After I got all the answers correct, I went ahead and I made another Word document with all the questions and answers, and that's the document that I sent to everyone on my team to study from. I did the work the first time I took it. I did all that work for myself, and then now I shared that along with everyone else. Okay, and so when I took the test, so I was in Orange County, and I had to drive all the way to LA to take the test. So I got to LA. It took about an hour. So I left. I think it was a Saturday. I don't know if they do weekends anymore, as we couldn't find a weekend one recently. But it was a Saturday. And I got there. The test was like at 8. I got there around 6, and then I just kind of looked. I looked through all the questions and answers again. Looked through the cram tests again. Actually, before I go there, so that was a practice test. Then once you're done with all the practice tests, there's this thing called a cram test. Okay, the cram test has questions and answers that are exactly like the ones on the test. So the practice tests, they're worded a lot differently than the way it's worded on the actual test. But the cram test has questions and answers that look almost identical to the ones on the state test that you take. Okay, so on the cram test, it's a little bit more difficult because you don't have the luxury of the control F, right? But you can go back to that document that I made first, or that you made first, because I deleted that, so I don't have access to that first one that I made with the content. So if you do this the way that I studied, if you do it the way I did it, you can go back to the content that's the first document you made. From that document, you can do a control F as you're going through the test. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because the way the cram test words are, it's almost as if it's more high level. It's not like, what does this mean? On the practice test, it's like, what does this mean? Or this means A, B, C, or D. On the cram test and the actual test, the actual state exam, you have to kind of know the content, and they're going to give you situational, it's more situational. So it'll be like, Brandon wants to be an insured. Can he be the beneficiary if he's the insured? And the answer is no, right? But the way they answer the question is more like real life situation. So it's more situational. Okay, so that's how the cram test goes. And then you go through the cram test. I think you have to get like a 70% in order to move along. But remember, these practice tests and these cram tests, you do not need to finish them in order to take the state exam. You don't need to finish them at all. It's for your practice and for your time. And I say that because I thought that I had to finish all my hours and I had to finish all my practice tests before I can take the test. That's what I thought, and that's what I was told. Then when I moved back up to the Bay Area, Mario basically said, no, you don't need to do it that way. All you need to do is thank you. All you need to do is basically take the test and then worry about the hours later. Okay, so that's what I've been doing with a lot of my agents. A lot of agents I've gotten licensed so far. I just tell them just go and just take the test.
Put in the front.
Yeah, just take the test and then don't worry too much about the cram test, the practice test, or the thank you. Yeah, don't worry about the cram test, the practice test, or getting the hours done. Just take the test and do the hours later. All right. But if you're the type of person and you like to go ahead and do all that stuff, you can. It's perfectly fine. You can do it either way. I'm just saying like this: the faster you get licensed, the faster you get paid here, right? So probably makes sense for you to try to get it done as quickly as possible. From there, so you do the cram test, and then the last thing I did. So I use like SAT study strategies. So they say when you do the SAT, and the same thing I did here was basically I studied really hard for 3 days straight. Okay, so I avoided maybe like 2 to 3 hours a day for 3 days straight, and then the fourth day or the day right before the test, they say that you should like do something fun and like relax, because then that'll give you a chance to kind of absorb the information from the 3 days. And then, so that's what I did. I just studied the practice tests. I studied the cram test after I was done and finished it. And then I studied the key terms. So you always study the key facts. The key facts were huge, and I didn't take the key facts that seriously. I only kind of glanced at them. And then when I got to the test 2 hours before the test, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a little more extra studying. Let me look at these key terms because I didn't really look at them. I looked at the key terms, and basically the key terms had specific stuff that's on the test. So do not glance over the key terms, because like 2 hours before, I was just like, oh my God, this is all the stuff that it's broken down in such a simple way. It's broken down in such a simple way that you just got to read through them. Then I took the test, and took me about 30 to 45 minutes. Um, Always keep a piece of paper when you're doing the test so you can write stuff out. There's not a lot of math going on in the test, but still you want to make sure that um, you are writing it down so you can kind of visualize some of the questions, because like I said, they're situational. So you want to kind of write them down, take out there are different numbers. You got to make sure what numbers match what. Okay? So and then I took the test, and I think I got a 61 or a 62. So I got like 1 or 2 points above the requirement. So you got to get a 60%. I got like a 61, 62. And then, yeah, I was pretty happy about that. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I'm not going to go through the contents. There's a couple things that you probably want to, I mean, I can give you a couple of things like the, you can have an owner, and you have an owner of an insurance policy who's not necessarily the insured. So that's one thing that you want to watch out on the test. They ask a lot of those questions. The owner and the insured cannot be the beneficiary nor the payer. So you can have three different people on a policy. You can have the owner, you can have the payer, and you can have the insured. All right, those can be three separate people. Okay, so they ask a lot of those different types of questions, like who's this and who's that, and can this person pay for the policy? Can he not pay for the policy? Can this person be the beneficiary? Can they not be the beneficiary? Okay. Another thing that they ask a lot of is the second to die. So there's a rider, and my mom's gonna probably talk a little bit more about riders. So on any insurance policy, there's a bunch of different riders that you can have, right? So you like long-term care, that's a rider. You have to be health licensed in order to add a long-term care onto an insurance policy. Okay. Another rider is second to die. So second to die means that if only if it's a husband and wife, and the husband gets an insurance policy, they can put his wife as a rider as the second to die, meaning that if he dies first, she takes over the rest of the insurance policy. Okay, and she gets paid out on top of that. So she gets both. Okay. Second to die. So that's that. They do talk a lot about how the IUL is structured and how you have cash value and then you have death benefit. Okay. So remember, in the IUL, the death benefit and the cash value, they're two separate things. Okay. If the policy is increasing, and usually it can't be increasing if they're over the age of 30, all right? So if or 40, I think, over the age of 40, if the policy is increasing, that means that when the person passes away, the beneficiary gets both the death benefit and the cash value, okay? If the policy is level, then the beneficiary only gets the death benefit, okay? So those are a couple of things that you want to worry about on the test. Other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward, but it's a lot of questions that have to do with who is who. There are some questions on a little bit on annuities and how you can roll over money, but there's only a few questions about that because this is more of a life only test.
Even for the life and health.
Yeah. There's some annuity questions on there. Yeah, there's a couple of them.
What is it?
Because, okay, so an annuity, okay, so those you don't know, annuity is basically a qualified to qualified. Yeah, ANNUITY. So annuity basically has to be a qualified to qualified, right? So a qualified account would be like a 401k, a mutual fund, not a pension, another annuity. So you can take a qualified account. You take a qualified account and basically roll it over into a qualified account, which is an annuity, without any tax implications. All right. If you were to cash out a 401k, you're going to take, depending on what age you do it, you're going to take up to a 50% tax hit and penalty hit. All right. And so there's a couple of questions on that where can you roll over a 401k into a life insurance policy? And the answer is no, you cannot do that. Legally, you cannot roll over a 401k, and you can't cash it out legally and put it into an annuity. Legally, you can't do that. Now, people do it, but
But that's not on the
don't
test.
do it.
But that's not on the test.
That is on the test.
It is.
It is on the
About
test.
being illegal or.
Yeah, is it legal to cash out a 401k
Oh, that's
and
right.
put it into an IUL or an insurance product? The answer is no.
They will have questions on like illegal stuff, right?
Yes, there's gonna be a lot of legal stuff and regulations, and
I mean like illegal stuff. There's not gonna be questions on illegal stuff, right?
yeah,
It's a variety of
yeah,
questions.
yeah, they're gonna ask you questions like, can you do stuff like that? And you gotta answer yes or no.
Yes or no?
Yeah,
Oh.
and there's a lot of questions on like the SEC, different regulatory firms. I don't remember the other. There's like a couple other ones. I remember the SEC because that's the Securities and Exchange Commission. So they have a lot of rules on what you can and cannot do. So a lot of it is rule based and regulatory based, and then some of it is content of how insurance policies work. Yeah,
And about you.
you gotta get going.
Yeah, I actually.
Is it 10 o'clock already?
No, it's not. I just remembered I haven't printed out the sheet for my authorization form. I just remembered.
It's all good. I'm
Yeah.
recording, so I'll send
Yeah,
it to you.
yeah.
All right.
That's nice meeting you.
Yeah. All right. Anybody have any questions or comments before we move on? I don't see any questions or comments. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I am going to hand it off to mi madre. She is going to talk about how she studied, which is going to be a little bit different. So just to introduce her, so my mom has been in the business for maybe a year or two, okay? And she, just to tell her, can I tell her your story? Is that okay? All right. Her story is she took the test 5 times, guys. 4 times. Took the test 4 times. I passed it by 1 or 2 points my very first time taking it. But at the same time, I was actually working at an insurance company, so like there's a lot of stuff I kind of already knew. So for her, she took it about 4 times, okay? The first couple times she tried to do it the way I did it, and then she just said, forget it, I need a book. So she had a book. She has this book here. If you guys need to borrow the book, just let us know. It's called the Exam Cram, okay? It gives you a lot of different content.
And test
in
each chapter.
Yeah, and a test in each chapter, okay? So she's gonna go over how she studied. She has a PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully it's
No,
very... Oh, you don't have a PowerPoint?
Because I can't get this out.
No.
But it's okay. I got my paper.
You sure?
Yeah.
You can't even go to go to your email?
Where is that? 'Cause I can't even see. How do you get this thing off of here?
I wouldn't... All right, anyway, so let me know when you're ready. Are you ready yet? Okay, well, she's ready. I'll see if I can pull up the PowerPoint. Without further ado, since she says she's ready, without further ado, please get up for Delma Rubin. She is going to teach you on how she passed the test. All right, thank you.
Good morning. It's good to be here with you today. And as my son, Jawan, explained a little bit about how I prepared for the test, actually, the reason why I ended up doing it 4 different times before I actually passed it is because it wasn't real clear whether I was doing life only or life and health. So every time I went into the test, it was set up for life and health. Well, I didn't study for life and health, I studied for life. So by the time I was halfway through the exam, they had a lot of questions on health that I didn't know anything about. Now, the good news was I did know some of the questions because that's my background. I retired in the healthcare field. So I knew a lot of the answers because of that. But I didn't pass the exam because I didn't have enough information about what I needed to know on the exam. So when I finally figured that out, that was 3 tests past that. And I realized that, wait a minute, I'm studying for something that is not on the test, and I couldn't understand that. So I went and I explained that to one of the lead people, And they said, well, you're doing a life and health exam and you're only supposed to do life. So when I figured that out and I studied for the life exam, guess what? I passed. So what really helped me when I finally realized what I needed to study was this exam cram book. I did go online and I did do the cram exams that was recommended, and they were helpful, but my style is I'm a visual person, and you might need to know what your style is. Some people are just audio, some are visual, and some are tactile. That means they need to touch things. For me, I'm visual and I have tactical kinds of sensories, so I learn best that way. And so I did go get the book because I needed to really understand what I was going in for the test. And when I did go in and didn't have the information, even though I did okay, because I didn't score anything, I mean, the lowest score I had was like 42%. So I figured that wasn't so bad given that I didn't have all the information I needed to study. So a lot of it was just common sense and your intuition. So when you are taking a test, if you look at questions and you're not real sure about them, just know that 55% of the individuals who take the test for the first time do not pass it. So you don't need to be confused or upset if you don't pass it. And by the fourth time when I actually passed the test, there were certain, oh, good. Yeah, well, that's some of it, anyway. There were a couple of people there who had taken the test for the 7th time and still did not pass it. So don't panic. At some point, everything's going to look familiar to you if you take it enough times. I do know that each time you don't pass the test, the next time you take it, they give you a different type of test. But there are some common similar questions on each test if you're taking it more than once. So I did use the book because what the book offered is each section for at least the first 15 chapters are just on life insurance. And after each particular subject, you have a quiz. And what you don't get right, you can always go back and review it again. Some people don't like to do a lot of reading. I don't mind doing it if I can find answers to what I'm looking for. So that might be a useful tool for you as well. Another thing that was helpful to me is to kind of go through the key facts. Now, I didn't really understand what that meant until I did the exam, and a lot of the facts that were on the exam, I didn't know. So the key facts is really, if you study that and just do a couple of the exam quizzes that they have, you're probably gonna do okay. And I wasn't given that information up front about the key facts. That was kind of after the fact. But once I kind of got everything together and everything was lined up the way it's supposed to be, I passed the exam. So I'm not proud that it was 4 times, but it was a reason why it was 4 times. If you have completed all your studying and you're ready for the exam, it was told to me to review your notes day of before you actually take the exam. That did not work for me. Once I finished studying the night before, that was it. I wasn't gonna look at any more notes because at that point, you have a slight amount of anxiety, at least I do, and most people do when they take exams. And my favorite exam is do an essay. Well, this is not essay, this is multiple choice. And multiple choice can be quite tricky because what they're doing is they're giving you answers, but you have to find the best answer to fit that particular scenario. So that's why you want to study, because in the studying, it gives you those type of styles that they use when they do multiple choice. For example, they'll say, all 3 of the 4 are correct, except, and then you have to figure out which the except one is. So it's a little tricky in that, but there's techniques in how you go about figuring that out. And I guess at another point, if Juwan does this again, we can really go more in detail about the techniques that you use to deal with multiple choice. There are also true and false answers as well. So what is also helpful is just to review past exams. And I know Juwan said he had those. Those helped me tremendously, because I could just look at the answer, go over the question again, look at the answer. And it's really, once you start reading and studying it, your mind is amazing. It can recall things, even subconsciously. So when you get into the test and you're not real sure, but it kind of feels like it's right, that's your subconscious really letting you know that you actually did study it. So now you have to do the multiple choice and figure out what best answer to put onto your test when you're ready to move to the next question. And don't get stuck on one question. What I did when I actually did the test, I went through the whole test and answered those I absolutely was certain about. And then I went back and started working on the unanswered questions. Now, keep in mind, this is my fourth time by this point I learned this technique, that I was to go ahead and answer everything I already knew, and then go back to the unanswered questions, and then go through the scenario of dealing with the multiple choice. Hopefully that was helpful. Juwan, can you go to the next one?
So
Well,
I
you can
have two
actually
tabs,
see-
so you can just go to the other tab if you want. See those two tabs?
No,
They're at the very top.
okay.
You have the two tabs.
Oh,
Just
okay.
click on the other tab. That's the second sheet.
Oh, okay. I do that.
Yeah, just click. Use your finger on the pad though. It's probably easier. Yeah,
So, I
Yeah,
do this.
that one.
Okay.
So is that it?
Yeah, I'm gonna go down to,
Just use the use the directional button.
yeah,
Not
but
there.
mine don't work that well. That's why
The directional button.
that's why I keep,
Or just click on the scroll.
I got
Yeah,
it.
there you go.
So as I mentioned, just try to recognize what type of study style you have and apply that to how you wanna study for the exam. Study with a purpose. So it's recommended that if you're going to take the exam, sometimes we have a tendency to procrastinate. So what can help you avoid that is to go ahead and schedule the exam. So once it's scheduled, you know you have to study. And that will also cut out of you having to procrastinate. So you wanna put your study plan in motion, you study, you check your knowledge, you do your test, you reevaluate, and you repeat. So again, a lot of times people don't wanna just get in a book and study, and that's fine, so just skip that. But you wanna definitely check your knowledge, so that means you go through those quizzes and those exams that were mentioned earlier. Take the test until you can figure out you have the right answer, or why you don't have the right answer. And the good thing about the CRAM exam is they'll explain why the answer is not correct, and then give you the correct answer. Let's see. Oh, so there's some keywords you want to look for when you take the exam, and I kind of mentioned it earlier. You probably can't see this very well because it's really small, but it says read each question twice and do not look at the answers until you understand the question. Then read all the answers, all your choices before selecting an answer. C might be an okay answer, but D might be the best answer. So that's how it gets a little tricky with multiple choice. That's why you, if nothing else, just know your subject matter. And once you know that, then the trickiness of the multiple choice won't be as difficult for you. So you look for keywords in the question such as must, all, none, except. Don't change an answer unless you are absolutely sure you know the right answer. But keep in mind, you're gonna live 50% of the questions that are gonna be asked. There's only gonna be 2 that's gonna be pretty similar. That means you got a 50% chance of getting it right. So again, it's not as much how you study as how you understand the studying and the test itself. Process of elimination is your best tool, and it will help you narrow down the answer choices in case you have to guess. Don't leave any question unanswered. It's better to try to answer it, because no answer is considered a wrong answer. So other than that, I don't have any other things I would want to tell you, but I do want to say go with your gut. The reason why I did as well on those exams, but I didn't pass it, because I went with my gut. There were certain things that just were common sense. So you want to think about the question and reword it so it makes sense to you, particularly those ones with the most, all, none, or except kind of question titles. Because again, it's trying to see how much you really truly do know. And you can get tripped up into that. So you want to try to avoid that by just going through a process of elimination.
All right.
Any questions?
No. Can you go over the first tab? You had some
Okay.
actual real life questions.
All good.
Yeah, use the pad. It's probably better.
Right here, go ahead.
There you go. Yeah. Let me.
Okay.
Can you go over some of those real life questions I see? Yeah, those are some good questions actually.
So these are just some of the areas that are gonna be covered on the exam. So you want some general knowledge about term life, whole life, variable life, annuities. You don't really need to know about health insurance, because it's not really gonna cover that. Also details on contracts like riders, provisions, beneficiaries, and primaries. Where I got tripped up at when I was taking the exam is term life, whole life, IUL, variable life. If you can study those, because those are gonna be on that exam more than most anything. That, and also about the agent, what your role is as an agent, what are the laws and the policies and the procedures for agents. Those were the two big glaring questions on the exam for me. And keep in mind, I took it 4 times, and each time, those were definitely on the exam. They do ask a little bit about Social Security. They ask a little bit about text treatment, and keep in mind, again, use your gut and your common sense on a lot of the questions, because they really are simple enough that you can figure it out without necessarily studying. But the knowledge base is really what the policies are, what different life insurance policies, and what you as an agent are responsible for. So it says it at the bottom here, and I'll keep going to my mouse. So it says, the exam will test your understanding of state statutes, rules, and regulations. This may include your definitions, insurance commissioner, licensing, marketing practice, free look, verticals, and etc. So those were on every exam I took. So what really helped was the key facts, because the key facts cover those quite well. So as I mentioned, the format is multiple choice. And what you want to do is kind of just understand how multiple choice work. So this means that if you aren't sure about the question, you still have a chance of getting the answer correct. So again, it's a process of elimination. And one more thing, I think. Sorry, give me a second here.
I think that's it.
That's
I wanted to see those like actual questions you had.
Okay.
So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So that concludes our licensing class. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you can just comment in the comment section. We'll try to get those questions answered. Hopefully, every one of you already has your test date set. You also already have your pre-licensing set. Okay, like remember what I said? You can go ahead and take the test whenever you want. You don't have to wait till you're done with your pre-licensing, or you can do it the other way where you do all your hours and everything else and then take your test. But that could take up to 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, so for those of you who are out there who are like, you want to get paid right away, just go ahead and just take the test. And then concludes our session. Thank you guys. Bye.